Thanks for staying with us. Let's take you now to ANC Kwazulu-Natal politics now. The party in that province has put forward several names as possible replacements for outgoing Premier Sihle Zikalala, who announced his resignation this afternoon. For more on this, I'm joined by political analyst Ongama Mtimka. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. This is a resignation that comes on the back of a defeat at the ANC KZN elective conference. Was it expected?
Well, in an ordinary situation, there shouldn't necessarily be that much of an inevitable link between whether one holds the chairmanship position and whether they are the premier of a province. But in ANC politics, especially since 2007, where the issue of two centers of power was discussed and therefore political office entrenched to be a gateway to state control, this was inevitable. We have seen that Sihle Zikalala's faction or camp suffered significant blows at the last conference, with the scales tilted almost 60-40 against them. So he became a political principal of a province with no political capital at all. So it was expected that within the culture of the politics of the ANC, where there are conceptions about two centers of power rather than two centers of service, this would be happening.
And we also know that he had said that he believes the environment is no longer conducive for him, saying he's got other work to do. And, one would have thought that the reassurance by Siboniso Duma, well, besides what you've said, that there would be no purging of leaders in the provincial executive shortly after he was elected chairperson, would be comforting enough in terms of stability. And we also heard him reaffirming his support for former President Jacob Zuma today. And, of course, we know that Siboniso Duma was from the so-called Taliban slate, which is one that is associated and linked to the former president. Is there anything to read into this reaffirmation of his support for the former president, even after making mention of him at the conference, really emphasizing his name? Is there anything to read into that?
So two things there. You mentioned the assurance of Duma and also, the position that Sihle Zikalala was in, and his reference to former President Jacob Zuma. You've got to feel for Sihle Zikalala because he managed, after the Nasrec conference, to lead KZN under very difficult circumstances, towards a workable support for President Cyril Ramaphosa, not only as far as enabling the decisions made at a national level to find expression provincially, among them the removal of Zandile Gumede, for example, but also in trying to mobilize the political differences or to navigate through the political differences in the province behind President Cyril Ramaphosa. And I think he went at length today talking about how that was in tandem with ANC principles and policy. So you've got to feel for him that that very act, which is in fact sound from an organizational sustainability perspective, to rally behind the sitting president, was in fact his undoing. And you can see when he started to realize the need to get a little bit closer to the Zuma camp. If my memory serves me well, it was in the period of the riots in KZN where he began, I think both him and Dumiseni Ntuli started managing their messaging to sound like we're not opposed to President Zuma per se, and that rhetoric kind of built up a little bit leading up to the conference. It's interesting that in KZN, the name of President Jacob Zuma has got implications on whether or not leaders after him, can, be re-elected, and whether or not somebody supports him. It's quite interesting that the mobilization that has happened in the province has been on whether or not one is pro or anti-Zuma. It's a very interesting and very unique state of affairs, because once President Mbeki, for example, had gone from office, yes, indeed, you had significant constituencies of the Congress of the People, people who were former pro-Mbeki people, some of them in the Eastern Cape, but generally not to such an extent that you would say the province being, is pro-Mbeki, to the extent that leaders after that would, their fortunes would be influenced by whether or not they were aligned to him. It's a very interesting and strange phenomenon in KZN.
Yeah. We know KZN.
And I think also about the reassurances from Duma. I think it's happened before. In the Eastern Cape, for example, once Oscar Mabuyane defeated Phumulo Masualle from the chairmanship of the province, he allowed, in fact, the argument is that it was the intervention of the national leaders that made him stay longer up until the 2019 election. Otherwise, there were agitations in the province for him to be removed once he had lost power. So, likewise, I think it would have been the case here, that the question of whether or not he should be allowed, or how much longer he should be allowed to continue, would linger there. And so maybe Sihle Zikalala looked at how much runway he had and decided to stop loss, as investors would say.
So some names have been put forward for the position: Nomusa Dube-Ncube, Amanda Bani, and Mbali Fraser. What do you read into some of those names put forward, and what it would essentially mean in terms of slates? Because it's still a relevant part, although we keep hearing unity, renewal, much of what we heard last week at the policy conference. But, slates heading into the conference in December.
So it's quite interesting. What I saw from Duma is that he's sensible enough from a leadership point of view that is able to take political decisions that may buy him time, or may position him as not somebody who is eager to come in and show a strong hand in provincial politics immediately. That's something one has to commend. In terms of the names themselves, I'm yet to apply my mind, but there is a degree to which there is an attempt to try and not actually be triumphalist in choosing a successor, and a person who's going to be, holding fort until the 2024 elections.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much for weighing in there. Thank you for your time. We're going to have to leave it there for now. Ongama Mtimka, political analyst, speaking to KZN Politics.